it's Michèle from Jasami Publishing again with an episode for Jasami Bookworm Podcast. And today I am very excited because I am here at the Britannia
Panopticon
Music Hall. Thank you, Judith.
Call it the pots and pans if it's easier.
So obviously you've just met Judith Bowers that will be chatting about this beautiful music hall. And when I say beautiful, because it's so authentic. Anyway, thank you and welcome, Judith.
Hi, thank you, Michèle, for inviting me.
It's our pleasure. So the Britannia Panopticon Music Hall was first founded in 1857, and it's the oldest surviving music hall. And I was first introduced to it watching Urban Secrets in Glasgow with the host Alan Cummings, which was quite a number of years ago. As we are exploring different and interesting subjects, funnily enough, our program producer Eilidh Beaton found you. And we are most excited to share all of this with our audience, which they will just have to come in person and see. So my first question, Judith, is how did you find this jewel and what prompted you to wish to restore it authentically?
Well, first of all, I used to have a company called the Spirit of Glasgow, which still operates. It's actually my friend that operates it now, Caroline. And I used to do a ghost tour around this area. And the ghost tour used to come around the back of this building because in this building, and it wasn't the music hall history that I was interested in, it was the history of the freak show in the attic that I was interested in, because they had various attractions in the attic when it was known as the Panopticon in later years. And we used to have a little Punch and Judy booth, and we used to do the headless woman, the headless man rather, and that was an action man without a head. And we used to do the bearded lady, which was a Barbie doll with a beard. We used to do the human who held the world record for fasting, or the human skeleton as we used to call him, and it was just a skeleton. And it was just, taking the mickey really. It was just having a bit of a laugh with the strange exhibits they had in the attic. But I had always been told that the music hall itself had long since been ripped out, long since didn't exist anymore. And then one day in the lane appeared a little sign which was part of the theatre trail. This is in probably the early 90s, maybe 91, 92. And there was a plaque with a kind of cross-section of the facade of this building. And you could see the auditorium in the cross-section, and it said underneath, the Britannia Music Hall, latterly known as Panopticon, where Stan Laurel made his debut in 1906. And I thought, well, that's quite interesting. So then I contacted people in the council, and they didn't really know anything about the building. They said as far as they knew, it was long since gone. And at that time, this building was the Leather Club, a leather clothing shop. This floor that we're currently sitting in, the stalls, or the penny spits as it was called back in the day of the music hall, this was the gents department. So it was rack upon rack upon rack of leather clothing, 80s decor, because it was 91, 92, and there was a false ceiling that hid the balcony. But I could see on either side of this false ceiling the sloping up on either side of the big room where the balcony was, and you could see these columns all the way around. And I was like, well, that's interesting. That's evidence that the music hall was still there. And I'm used to looking for evidence because I started my career as a teenager when I was 16, 17 years old on archaeological excavations. That was my first job, was a field archaeologist. I left school.
I'm so jealous. I've always wanted to do that. Oh, you're so adventurous.
Yeah, well, it's because I had a crush on this guy and he was an archaeologist, so I ended up getting into field archaeology that way.
Best adventures.
And that's how I ended up in Scotland in 1986 on a 6-month contract. Yes, 36 years later, I'm still here. But anyway, so I kept on coming into this shop because I was like, this is really intriguing me. I need to know if anything does survive above that false ceiling. But they would never let me upstairs. They used to say, oh, there's nothing up there, go out, disappear, please, just go. In the end, I think the manageress's name, was Janice, and in the end she barred me from the building because I kept on trying to go through staff-only doors and things like that to see what was beyond them.
Yes, where the nose leads.
Where the nose leads, definitely. And in the end she barred me, and that was in about 1994. Anyway, and then I didn't come in for ages and didn't really think about the building very much, except for when I was walking down the Tron gate, I would always look up at this pale blue facade which was peeling and crumbling. The stonework was crumbling. It was in a terrible state. And I used to think, I wonder what is up there. I mean, it's a blooming shame that gorgeous facade is being left to rack and ruin. Then on February the 23rd, 1997, I remember it very well because I had a meeting with the bank manager and it was in my diary, so that's how I can remember it. And I was trying to get an overdraft for the Spirit of Glasgow Ghost Tours because I wanted to do more publicity and marketing, and they said no. So I'd been dressed in my finest clothing. At the time I had a cheekbone-length pillar box red bob. And I was walking along the Trongate back to my office, which at that time was in the old Candleriggs Market, which is now Merchant Square. And as I'm looking up at the building, which was normal for me, I'm walking past it and looking up at the pale blue paintwork and thinking it's still really awful that it's like that. I hadn't actually noticed that it was no longer the Leather Club. And somebody was tapping on the window. So I looked around and it was my lovely friend, Helen Campbell, who I hadn't seen for a couple of years. And she's knocking furiously at the window going, come in for a cuppa, come in for a cuppa. So I went in and we sat out the back in the staff area and I'm going, oh, have you ever seen the music hall? Is it still there, Helen? She says, oh, I've never seen any music hall. She says, but I have seen the attic. She says, I keep my props up there, and I swear to God it's haunted, Judith. She says, if I go up into that attic, I take a torch with me. I scan the whole place with my torch, identify where what I'm looking for is, and then I run in, I grab it, and I run back out again as fast as possible. She says, it's the creepiest place ever. And I'm like, really? And she says, yeah, I can't stay. She says, it terrifies me. So we're sitting chatting away, just sort of catching up on the business of the day and how the family is, all that kind of nonsense. And then Mr. Alam, who at that point was the owner, came down the stairs and he saw me sitting there with Helen. And I just, I was in my finest. I was in my 20s. I think I was 28 at the time. And I just sort of fluttered my eyelashes and, showed him a bit more leg and said, go on, Mr. Allen, show me your darkened areas above the false ceiling.
Oh, perfect.
I know. Feminism, eh?
Oh, yes.
Sometimes it stands against a girl.
Well, we're all utilizing what we've got, our assets, yes.
Dear listeners, don't worry. It's okay. I didn't do anything naughty. But sometimes, girls, you do have to use your female wiles with a gentleman.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It gets you where you need to be, honey. Sometimes it does. Anyway, so he took me, actually, up a back staircase from this room. We went through that door over there, and we went up a winding tenement stair, which is very dusty and dirty and very, very old. And we came out of a door up there, which is now suspended in midair. Well, it looks like it's suspended in midair, because there is nothing there anymore underneath it. But at that point, there was a big platform on top of what we now use as a stage, above the original stage, in fact. And it had been used as a toilet. It was built as a toilet in 1969 by Universal Stores for their staff. Mm. So the roof of the toilet block was where the door was, and we used to use that roof to get across and into the balcony by crawling through a hole in the proscenium arch. Anyway, at this point, they were using the top of this toilet as storage for their coat hangers. So there was boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of coat hangers stacked up. And I had to push these boxes of coat hangers out of the way and go to the edge of this platform, painting it all out with torchlight. And there was this roof truss jutting up like an iceberg. And on either side of this roof truss was the balcony, which I painted out in torchlight. And I could not believe how much survived. There was literally bottles of beer that had just been left in 1938 when they closed the building.
Oh, my gosh.
The cleaners had been told not to bother their arse, basically. So they didn't. And so it was just full of pigeon shit and chicken shit, because it was used as a chicken farm during the Second World War up in the balcony, because it was a nice vacant area to produce eggs during the war effort. So there was chicken shit and all sorts over the balcony, and these little bottles of beer sticking out of it, and all sorts of surface debris.
Walking into history.
It was literally like walking back in time. That's why I always call it my Narnia. The opening of my book is about how I discovered the how I first came into the building. And the experience was very, very emotional, because to walk into some. That's why I always loved archaeology. It's touching across time. It is time travel. You are connecting, reaching out across time, and you are the first person to touch that since that person left it there.
And whether it's hundreds or thousands of years ago,
or even if it's just decades,
decades,
it resonates.
Yes,
you know, you feel it. It's like a electricity that happens between you and that person. You are literally touching the most incredible thing. You know, you are touching time. You're reaching through time. You're touching ghosts.
Yes.
And it was just absolutely incredible. Anyway, I had no intention of doing anything. I get quite emotional about it because it was just such an incredible thing to see. And then as I was leaving, Mr. Allen said to me, "So you do ghost tours?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "Can I have your business card? Because I'd really like to bring my kids out on one of your ghost tours." Because I'd been telling him stories that I knew about the building, because by this time I'd found out about Stan Laurel's debut, Jack Buchanan's debut, Harry Lauder's performance in here, which was his second professional engagement, and lots of other little tidbits that I'd found out by going through the archives. And I used to include them in some of my tours. So anyway, he then, the next day, phoned me at the office, not to ask me if he could book a tour, but to say, "Look, I've been getting letters in from Historic Environment Scotland, or Historic Scotland as it was then, and I've got an outstanding repairs notice on the building, and they want to see the building, and I don't want to let them in because I don't know what to say to them because it's not really part of my culture." And I'm like, "Right, okay, so what do you want me to do?" He says, "Can you come in and talk to them for me?"
Oh,
what?
Therein lies.
Come in and talk to them for you. He said, "Yeah, just show them round." And I'm like, "Okay." He said, "I'll just leave the keys for you." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I came in, and I'd only been around the building once, and to be honest with you, at that point, this building was quite disorientating to walk around and navigate. So I brought in Councillor Moynes and Randall McGuinness, who at that time was one of the chiefs of Historic Scotland. I think he still is a chief of Historic Environment Scotland. Lovely man.
Oh.
Absolutely gorgeous man. Anyway, so we came in and I showed them upstairs, and it was quite funny because Ranald had a leaf with him, which is that very long, thin trowel, and he'd actually sort of made a little bit of hole in plaster and poked his finger through because he was intrigued by this sort of doorway that had been plastered up. It was a hoist window from when it was a warehouse, because this was originally a warehouse. And he poked his finger through, and we could see down. There was like a big sort of drop down into a room below on the other side, and he shouted out hello, and this poor lassie screamed and ran out of the
room. Oh no.
Yeah, she did. It was so funny. Anyway, that's how I met my friend Lisa Govan, because then I was like, "We'll have to go and see this girl to make sure she's okay," because she probably thought that was a ghost or something.
Probably.
So I went running, and it turned out to be a lovely lady, a jeweller called Lisa Govan, who that was her workshop. And I was like, "It's okay, it was only us, it's not a ghost, you're fine." And she's like, "God, that was absolutely terrible."
A living ghost.
Yeah. So that was the first friend I made here. Well, I suppose that you could say that Ranald was the first friend that I made in here. So yeah, and then the next week, Kirsty Adam said to me, "Can you come round again? And, you know, I want to talk to you about this and find out a bit more and see what else we can do." And I'm like, "You know, I know nothing about doing conservation projects or building development or restoration." I said, "That's not my background. My background is field archaeology, and now I'm a social historian and tour guide. I wouldn't know where to start, love." Well, he's like, "Well, there was an article in the Sunday papers, I want to talk to you about it." So I was like, "Right, okay, I'll come in next week." So the next week I came in, and he showed me this article in the Sunday papers, and it was about how to set up a charity.
Oh.
And I'm like, "Right." He said, yeah. So this law firm, Bigot and Bailey, he says they're a charity lawyer. Go and speak to them. I was like, well, I'm not taking on this. What I'm going to do is go and speak to Glasgow Building Preservation Trust. So I spoke to Liz Davidson at Glasgow Building Preservation Trust. She was then the director there. And that's how I met Liz, who's still to this day a very good friend of mine. She's a fabulous lady. And when I went in to meet Liz for the first time, which by this time it was March, it was the middle of March.
Yes.
And Mr. Allen had also said to me, "Why are you renting an office round in candle rigs. You can have an office in this building for free. So it was the same week that I basically moved into this building, and he gave me a key to the building so I could let myself in, and I moved my ghost tour office basically into here free of charge. I'm like, fantastic.
That's the best price going.
Best price going, so I was paying about £400 a month for my other office. So it was fantastic. And so I said to Liz, she said, well, you know, can you get into the building? I said, well, yes, because Mr. Allen has actually just given me an office in the building for my ghost tour company, Spirit of Glasgow, so that I can keep my costumes there and, you know, do tours from there. And she's like, oh, you've got access to the building? And I said, yeah. She says, whatever you do, stay there. We've been trying to get into that building for years, and then I found out there'd been a whole feasibility study done by Glasgow Building Preservation Trust with the Paragon Ensemble and all sorts of things, but they'd never been able to get over the threshold. In fact, when I discussed it with Mr. Allen, he was kind of upset about it, because he said to me, well, they never asked me if they could do a feasibility study for the building I own.
Oh.
So, I mean, he said, how would you like it? Because we ended up I organised this big meeting, getting the Paragon Ensemble together, and Glasgow Building Preservation Trust, and Kershid Allen, and we all got together. Mr. Allen was a lovely guy. He's still a friend. I still see him occasionally.
Comes to visit the ghosts.
Well, I go and visit him sometimes. We bump into each other. He's got a lovely hotel in the West End. But Mr. Allen was kind of upset with the Paragon Ensemble because they were kind of rude to him. And he said, how would you feel if somebody walked into your house and told you that they were moving in and doing this, that and the other?
No, it's too personal.
It's too personal. So Mr. Allen got a bit upset with them, and he says, no, you're bad. You're never coming over the threshold. Because I was hoping that I would get them together and they'd be able to work together and find a solution to what we do with this beautiful old music hall. So that didn't work. But anyway, I decided at that point, right, okay, I'll find out more about how you set up a charity, and I'll get something going, and then people can take over. Well, that was 25 years ago.
And no one else has been able to do it. So it tugged at the heartstrings, and you just...
Still does.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, still does every day that I'm in here. I mean, it's the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, and I've been doing it for 25 years, so I've had 25 years of difficulty. Because if anybody thinks they're going to just go walk into a building, take it over and earn a lot of money, forget it. It costs you a fortune. It's what keeps me and my husband poor, to be honest.
But it's when it's important to you, even though if it keeps you poor, it's a passion.
Yeah. You've got to basically decide whether or not you want money or you want to have satisfaction out of what you do. And I have a great deal of satisfaction out of what I do. And I've met so many amazing people, including my husband, in this building. So it's you know, I don't know if you sense it. The listeners won't sense it, but you might sense it, Michèle. There's a bit of a life about this auditorium.
Oh, yes.
It's not dead. It's not like any other building. There is a feeling that it's alive and breathing, and that she's watching, and she's waiting.
Absolutely.
And she gives you a big cuddle.
You can feel it. It's almost as if you can see up in the stalls the people that are there.
The balcony.
Oh, the balcony.
Sorry. Is the stalls.
Oh, we're in the stalls, and the balcony's above. See, I'm my first time to a music hall. So, but just you feel them there. And I'm not afraid of ghosts, so I might want to visit upstairs. So you've done a lot of work now. When Urban Secrets, did the television show, and
that
Alan,
was fun. Alan's lovely. Oh my goodness, what a lovely, gorgeous man.
You can tell, from the way he just, tours everything, and I was so intrigued about this. So when he was here, that was I think about a decade ago. What have you done since then? That and Did you get with that advertisement? Did that bring a lot of donations in?
Actually,
and awareness?
I think it brings a lot of people into this day because they repeat that one a lot, and I always know when they've repeated it because I'll be standing in the queue at Marks and Spencers and somebody will say something to me like they know me, and I'm like, what? Yeah, it's a great program, and I thank Alan for it. It has been great for this building, and programs like that are great for this kind of work, for all kinds of charities, buildings, organisations. I mean, it is about community, and TV film, video, it's all about community. You know, what we put online as video clips is all about community, I think. And it all draws attention, it all brings people to you. And what we've done since then, well, the only thing really we've done is actually bring the stage back, which took about a year and a half to fundraise for. And in 2015, we took off the toilet block, which we'd had been using as a toilet until then, although it was the creepiest toilet ever, because we actually know of somebody that died on that stage, Johnny Cato, an acrobat. And we've also got the ghost of the stage manager, George Suprini, on the stage. And it was kind of a strange experience in the ladies' toilets. You always felt that somebody was watching you when you were having a wee-wee.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't mind ghosts, but yeah, the personal parts might be a bit, yes.
Whether they're dead or alive, you do not want them watching you do your business. Do you know what I mean?
That's what the door's there for, and they,
Everybody used to say the same thing. I feel like somebody's watching me. I'm going to go somewhere else to the toilet. In fact, that's when I started going to Debenhams if I needed to go for a pee. But we don't have Debenhams anymore.
No. Further afield.
Yeah, they were good toilets as well. Now I use Marks and Spencer's. Oh, don't tell anybody. Shh. That's only because
that's a secret.
That's because it gets very cold in here, and if there's nobody else around to preheat the toilet seat for me, I go to Marky's where they've got heated toilets.
That's lovely.
Nice.
So that raised up a certain amount of money through donations.
Yeah.
Now, it's not just donations, because you do tours and other things. Please tell me all the things you do. We'll have links in the description, but please tell us.
Well, we do also, in fact, one of the ways we got the stage back was a bit of funding from Glasgow City Council, but we also we got sponsorship for the planks on the stage. So everybody that gave us £100 could put have their name on the planks.
Ah, Judith, was your name on there first?
No, actually, my name's not on there at all.
Oh.
Isn't that terrible?
Should be. Well, as much as you donate of your time, you should have had one gratis.
You're right. Maybe I should have done. But no, I've got a strict policy. You have to pay for it. I'm not paying £100 for a plank. Thank you very much. My ashes will eventually be under the stage, so that's fine. But yeah, so in fact, that's still going. If anybody wants a plank on our revered stage where Stan Laurel made his stage debut, it's £100 and you can have a plank. And we also do shows. We've got tonight, for example, Rocky Horror Picture Show with the Denton Deviants doing a shadow cast.
Oh.
We've got pantomime coming up. Tomorrow we've got Music Through the Ages, which is different stuff from over the last 120 years of music, including swing and Lindy Hoppers and stuff like that as well, and jazz band and all sorts. We do all sorts of shows. We do everything from music hall shows, which are free of charge during the summer months, Laurel and Hardy film nights to celebrate the fact that Stan Laurel debuted here. They're free by donation, so people pay. It's a pay-as-you-please, basically. Regular comedy club nights. We've got pantomime coming up in December this year. It's Aladdin.
Oh, a little bit of magic. Oh, you're keeping the magic going.
We do keep the magic going, and it's a very magical building to see things in, because as you probably are aware, we haven't done much work in the auditorium. It's still in its original condition.
As you look around, you want to, it takes you back in time.
It does.
Because it hasn't been restored to a pristine...
And it will never be restored. It'll always be a conservation, because it's far too valuable to be a restoration. Anyway, where do you restore it to? If we were to restore it back to the original music hall, it means one entrance.
And it doesn't, although it might look like it, you can't get the feel for it, because as things age, there are castles all over Scotland, but I have to say my favorite's Dunnottar Castle, and it's the falling down one.
It's the falling down one.
But that's my favorite castle.
Yeah.
So it's not about something being pristine or restored to what it was originally, but coming in and feeling it, and feeling, as you said, Judith, earlier, feeling the building, and it wraps you up, because I'm actually quite warm, and I'm not even in a big heavy coat. I'm only in a small one.
That's true.
So with
Michèle is skimpily clad. She's practically in a bikini for this building.
Well, no, because then we'd have the problem of Medusa, and I don't want to terrify the audience with that thought, but thank you very much. Thank you very much. Throughout its varied history, and I know we talked a little bit about Stan Laurel, what else do you think is really important that was a turning point in it for what it's gone through in its 150-something year life?
I think for me the most important aspect of this building is not so much the people that are on the stage, although that is the big selling point. Stan Laurel's debut, huge selling point. It's the audience. And I think it's even more relevant now that we're about to go through a time of great austerity. The people that came here, basically, particularly in the early days, when you think about it, they didn't have the same sort of lives as we do today. They didn't have the luxury of going back home to a lovely, comfortable, centrally heated home where you got the TV in the corner of the living room. What you had was men, for example, the working man would not even have a home to go to at the end of the day. They would stay in the model lodging houses, and if they couldn't get into one of the beds in the model lodging house, then they had to have the penny line, which is a washing line. They would hang themselves by their oxters. You know, and that's how you slept. So the music hall became a huge part of the working class daily life. It wasn't a place to just be entertained. It was a place to sit, to drink, to eat, to smoke, to have a laugh, to release the pressure of daily survival, because people didn't live, they survived day to day in the worst living and working conditions in British history. We're talking the height of the Victorian industrial era, when the working classes were a commodity, a disposable commodity. If you died at work, it did not matter. There was plenty of people to take your place.
Tragic, but true.
It was a difficult time. Come on, they were employing 18-month-old babies in weaving mills because they were small enough and quick enough to run through the looms if anything fell in them. You know?
It's horrific to think about.
They were shoving children up chimneys, for goodness sake.
Yes, when you were small enough. And it wasn't about, it was about as soon as you were functional,
yes, as soon as you were functional,
could do that,
you were occupied.
So you, yes, what
there
you
was
said
no
is
such thing as childhood.
Commodity, and that's the sad part. There wasn't a childhood, and I think often today we're so used to a certain standard of life. Even those that don't have much still have a lot more than what they had back then, and you create such a beautiful picture of it. I can almost see them. So please tell everyone about the beams and such, and the keeping the hands warm, because I heard that in the show. We are going to advertise it, but the way you talked about it, I was cringing and laughing at the same time.
We see that's the boys, isn't it? We're talking about. We had 1/3 of the audience in here was boys aged 9 to 13 on average, and of course they weren't boys. They were regarded as grown men. They were working, they were doing jobs. And one of the things they used to do was squeeze into the front of the balcony where they could urinate over the edge and try and hit the act on stage. But you couldn't fit 500 approximately boys in the front of the balcony, so not all of them got into the front of the balcony to do that. Some of them got into the back of the balcony, and it's quite a span. It's a good, 20 metres, I suppose, maybe? Well, yeah, it's difficult to tell, actually. I should know this measurement off the top of my head, but I don't. But it's a bit of a distance, and if you could urinate from the back of the balcony to the stage, then, that would have been a music hall. That's a music hall act, isn't it? That's a music hall act, because that is quite a talent, that is. So instead they used to pick up horse manure, and that was, of course, on every street corner, because horses were used across industry. Before, of course, the combustion engine. So every street corner had a pile of dung, basically, and you'd get it scraped up, and fresh dung is great because it generates heat. So when it was cold, they used to stuff it in their pockets, and they used to keep their hands warm whilst waiting to come in. And then when the first Rotten Act came on the stage, they lobbed it at the stage. And it's one of the reasons why nobody wanted to sit in the stalls where we're sitting, because it's quite a distance to throw, and of course you'd have everything landing on you. You'd have horse manure, bottles of urine landing on you, spitting at people, because there was no spitting notices everywhere because of tuberculosis.
Oh, that's true.
And cholera and all sorts of things. So, of course, when people see no spitting notices, it
you
just
have
makes
to
them spit, doesn't it, really?
Yes.
So that's why this bit that we're sitting in was called The Penny Spits.
Oh. So now, was it a penny to get in?
Yes, that's one of the charges. There were
so
different
it's a penny to get in, and then
different
you get spit on as well. Oh, that's
joyous.
Great.
Joyous, yeah, a penny and upwards, basically. And at some points there was a halfpenny. And in fact, in the days that in the 1930s, by which time cinema had taken over the whole of Glasgow, but it was the Deep Depression where people really didn't have any money. And one of the ways you could get into a cinema was with 3 Geely jars.
Really?
Or jam jars.
Oh, my
in
God.
other words. And so, you know, that was the price of getting into the cinema, and that's one of the reasons why this building went into decline in the 1930s, is because by that time Glasgow had over 300 cinemas. Now, if you had 3 Geely jars, where were you going to take your Geely jars? To a rundown old Victorian music hall which stank of wee-wee, tobacco, horse manure, fish guts and fish heads, which were commonly thrown in here as well, and all sorts of Victorian detritus, you know. I mean, it would have stank in here. Or were you going to go to one of the newfangled, fancy, with upholstered seats, Art Deco picture palaces that even had lovers' seats, which were like couches, basically?
I can think of which one I would select.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. So what, at that period of time, that would have led to a real decline. And actually, I have to say, I think we're going to split this into 2 episodes, because I want to learn more about the history that we've got to go, because it's so fascinating here, and I've got an excuse for coming back again, which I now will. So we are going to, I want to hear more instances in the next episode about what people used to do here and say here, and the catalyst that would change things. We're going to put it in the descriptions about, you know, how people can donate, also about coming in to see the shows, and I think you do rentals for events and such.
Yeah, you can hire the auditorium for getting married in, for example. If you want to get married here, you can get married here.
Oh, very cool.
I even have a friend who's a wonderful lady who's also a humanist, so she can do your humanist service for you, and she's gorgeous.
Oh, perfect.
And just like the rest of us, completely barking mad.
Makes life most interesting.
It does, darling, it does. Who wants to be normal? Actually, I've never met a normal person in my life, Michèle. Let's face it, we're all a bit quirky.
Neither have I.
We're all individuals.
I think that's what makes the best of us, is the quirkiness and the individuality and the ability to be individual.
Exactly.
And do things like you've done here at the music hall. So I think I will just kind of wrap it up at the moment. I'm going to come back for a second episode, probably in January, so that we can talk more about it, because we're going to do the teaser with all the peeing and weeing and all the other stuff. It was actually a benefit to the building. However, we're not going to tell you about that now.
No.
We're going to leave that for the next episode.
Yes, I will tell you all about wee-wee and its benefits. It might come back because it's very sustainable.
Absolutely. I think it probably will. So what I'd like to do is say thank you for joining us today, Judith.
Thank you,
It's been wonderful. I look forward to the next episode. As we always do, we'd like to end it with a shout out. Who would you like to give a shout out to for this one?
There are so many people. I would really like to give a shout out to everybody that has supported me on this long journey, particularly my current amazing staff who have been with me for nearly 10 years, most of them, and my amazing volunteers and trustees who, without them, I wouldn't still be here. And also to the amazing people that set me on this journey.
And the adventure, I think it
and
is.
A huge adventure, massive adventure, which still continues.
Yes, and we're definitely going to have to take my nose and put it somewhere interesting, maybe not where the wee-wee was. However, my shout out is to all volunteers who do give their time and effort to projects and commitments such as the music hall. Without you, we would never survive, and we do quite a bit, as you know, at Dasami with our commitment to community. So I will say cheerio for now. We will see you in a short time. Well, actually, I will be talking to you in a week. As always, I wish you a sunny day, and don't forget to download so you can listen to it at any point in time. And it's Michèle, Dasami Bookworm Podcast. Cheerio.